I've never been in kind of a classroom atmosphere with him, but he's like a teacher because if you read what he's writing, it's stuff that they don't talk about in high school, they don't talk about in college, and they definitely don't talk about it in the media. And this is Thomas Frank, and he just wrote a new book, and it's about populism. I'm going to hold the book up quick. It's the People Know, rather, and it's a brief book on populism. And definitely look at Listen Liberal, too. It was another great book, and that really opened my eyes to what's going on with the Democratic Party. And my hero at the time, Barack Obama, and how he really kind of manipulated me, and also Bill Clinton, too. So, Thomas, thanks so much for going on the program. This is a real treat for me, and I hope it is for the viewers. We greatly appreciate your time.
Well, Rob, I really I appreciate you having me, but I got to apologize to your viewers. I just got back from exercising outside, and I'm just like, it's 100 degrees in Kansas City, or 95 or whatever, and it is hot as blazes. And I just rode my bike all around the neighborhood, and I'm completely soaked in sweat. And I apologize. I got the times mixed up. I thought I had time to clean up, but I don't.
No worries. And Thomas, I'll tell you what.
Gotta stay healthy, my friend.
I agree 100%. And with this coronavirus, it's crazy. So everybody, definitely, like I said, check out Thomas's work. Listen Liberal. What's the matter with Kansas? That came out a little while ago, but that kind of brings to light a lot of, what
it's
happened.
Still going on. It's still going on.
What happened in the Bush administration, too. So definitely check that out in the new book, The People's Know, A Brief History on Populism. Thomas, let's kick this around, though. For the viewers that don't know you, can you speak about growing up as a Republican, and then now you're a liberal, and how did that change happen?
Ooh, good question. So I was a conservative right here in this house. This is my dad's house in Kansas City, as you see. And I was pretty conservative. I was a Republican. And, when I look back, I was 15, right? I was just starting to figure out the world around me. And why was I like that? Reagan was president, and Reagan appealed to me. This is before he was president, about 1980. I was part of that whole sort of generational disillusionment with Jimmy Carter. The hostage crisis, America seemed weak. It seemed like the best days were in the past. You might have forgotten this. One of Reagan's slogans was "Make America Great Again."
Right.
And Reagan put it over a lot more convincingly than Trump did. He was an actor. He was good at it. Trump's an actor too, but Reagan was a better actor. And I look back now at the way I fell for that stuff that Reagan was selling. And there was this nostalgia for a world that I had never known, this sort of Frank Capra, America where small towns were intact and everything. And I'd never seen that, but I was nostalgic for it. And it was also absorbing the politics of the world around me. So Kansas City, or the part of Kansas City that I grew up in, is a very conservative place. By the way, an aside here, I used to collect matchbooks. I was digging through my matchbook collection yesterday that I found it in the attic, and I had a book of matches with Barry Goldwater's face on it, so it's like, I got it from one of the, families on the street here. It's like a lot of conservatives around here. Okay. And so I absorbed that, and Reagan was the perfect salesman. And, I went to college. I was even a college Republican for a while, but I got over it real quick once I hit college. And it's a combination of factors. Your world gets expanded by reading books, learning about the world around you. I was basically I was a populist, but I didn't know it. Okay, let's put it that way. I was a populist, but I didn't know what that was. I fell for Reagan's folksiness and for his charm and for this vision of an America, this warm America that cared about everyone. And for some reason I thought Reagan embodied that. And then I went to college and realized that I had everything upside down. And, and that Reagan would not deliver that stuff. And that stuff came from an entirely different political place. And I figured this out very quickly in by my first or second year in college. And then, of course, it was also reinforced by when you get jobs in the summertime, and any kind of exposure to the workplace. And if you have any sort of consciousness at all, you are like instantly, your conservatism just evaporates. It's like, I could tell you about the jobs that I got here in Kansas City, but they, long story short, they sucked. And, and management was utterly contemptuous of me. And you learn real quick.
Most of the country the union there's no
that's
union
right.
period. So
yeah, they're gone. Yeah, they're in a place like this, which was a strong union town once upon a time. It's largely evaporated.
Right.
Yep, that's the story of our times, And by the way, it's just gotten worse since then. And you look at those small towns around Kansas that I had this kind of misplaced nostalgia about, and they are in a state of ruin, and blue collar life and small town life everywhere you go in this country is in a state of ruin. And the thing that gets me, this was the message of what's the matter with Kansas, but now it's exploded with Trump, is these people whose lives are, their civilization is circling the drain, and they know it. And the only one that is speaking to them is this asshole, Donald Trump. And it's like, that the Democrats can't figure this out. When so many, it's not just me. I'm not the only one that's written about this. Lots of other guys have written about this too, and they just can't, get their head around it.
Thomas, doesn't it almost seem like the Democrats don't really give a shit right now, and they kind of want this to happen, that people are becoming homeless? The $600 is about to run out. People like me that are depending on that's running out in I think it's 9 days, but that's going to be the last check. And if they do another check, they might give you $200. I mean, that's a total joke in itself. So it's in the Democrats, like you said, they stand by, they don't do anything, period. And you have these people that are so-called the party establishment, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything right now. So it's almost like they really don't give a damn.
Well, so I can't, look, I haven't really been following the news lately. Yeah. I'm sure you're right.
That's smart.
The thing is that in a larger sense, no, they don't give a damn. And this is the real tragedy of what's happened in the Democratic Party. So what I look at is the big picture, the long-term history. And over the last 40 years, while the Republicans have developed this populist style, at the same time, of course, becoming these awful, doing these awful things in reality. But while they've developed this style that's very folksy and charming and anti-elite and all that, while they've done that, the Democrats have remade themselves as the party of an elite, of a different elite. It's like they've walked right into the stereotype that people like Reagan were making for them. They've embraced it. And they really are a party of this kind of highly educated professional class. And look, at the end of the day, the ideology that they embody and that they embrace and that they talk about all the time is an ideology of meritocracy. You get what you deserve in this life, and what you deserve is determined by how you did in school. And so they look at places like, rural Kansas, and they're like, well, what school did you go to? Was it MIT? Was it Harvard? Well, no, then, too tough shit. I'm sorry. You probably can't broadcast.
No, it's fine. You spoke about this in Listen Liberal, and I remember you talking about this with the New Democrats, with Bill Clinton and Al Gore coming out and talking about, and that's when this really kicked into gear.
Yeah, but you see it with Obama as well. And it's now Obama, like we said, really, I thought he was a really good guy and his heart's in the right place on a lot of issues, but you watch the way he talks about these subjects, and ultimately they don't have a lot of sympathy for these people at the bottom. Or you look at the one of the things that I did, I don't know whether it was a good move or a bad move, but I wrote this essay when Trump was running in 2016, where I said, I disagree with this guy. I'm not going to vote for him. I'm probably, I'm a loyal Democrat. I'll vote for Hillary. But look at what he's doing, Democrats. Look at what he's saying in his rallies. It's not just this dog whistle racism crap. I mean, some of it is, Yeah, a lot of it is, build the wall, all that crap. He's also talking about trade agreements. He's also talking about the endless wars. He's also talking about the opioid epidemic, which the Democrats were not, talking about. And he comes to these people and he seems sympathetic, and this is hugely important. And the Democrats could not grasp that. Now this is going to be different this time around. I think Biden is also good at pretending to care about people. He's real good at it, as a matter of fact. He seems sympathetic, and I think that he will almost certainly be, the way things stand now, it would be hard for him to lose, even if he says nothing between now and election day.
Well, I want to head back into the interview, but just to end on what you were speaking about, Thomas, Bernie had Trump with that, NAFTA, TPP.
Yeah,
Hillary didn't, because Hillary wanted the TPP.
Well, Hillary was
against it.
Yeah. Right. Well, she was. Hillary was. Look.
But don't you feel though, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but don't you feel that Trump has that on Biden with the NAFTA? That Biden voted for these agreements. Biden was really pushing the TPP.
Oh, of course.
Even when Hillary was running.
By the way, you go down the list, Biden is vulnerable in all sorts of ways.
Right.
Mass incarceration is a huge one, and Biden was signed on to every one of those big, what they called. What was their name, from like tough on crime laws in the 80s and the 90s. These things are disastrous. And Trump has shown a willingness to use that against Biden. He has tried. The thing is that all of that is dwarfed by the pandemic and the unemployment right now. And but there's other things that Biden did that are, that were at the time that were supposed to be so
the bankruptcy bill with Elizabeth Warren.
Exactly. So it's supposed to be so centrist and responsible. And now, he's going to get attacked by a Republican on these things, but none of that's going to matter.
Do you see Kamala Harris? She seems like she's the identity politics, young black woman that's going to fit that police. Although Kamala Harris has a lot of problems with as being the Attorney General of California.
Yep.
You see Biden picking her. I feel like the Elizabeth Warren ship has sailed because she's not black, let's be honest. And they're trying to play identity politics right now.
Well, they are, but and Biden does, that. Look, that is what Bill Clinton's famous line, you might remember. He wanted a cabinet that looks like America, and he did it. Right? He had the most diverse cabinet ever, or up till that time. And they did indeed look like America, but they legislated for the 1%, So they were all of these highly educated banker types, right? And they looked like us, but they didn't think like us. Right. They didn't talk like us. And that's how the Democrats play the game. And I think Kamala Harris probably, there's a really good chance that she will be it. Early on, she was the sort of the Clinton wing of the party. She was their favorite. And and that'll lay them open to a lot of criticism from the left wing of the party. But
it's sad that they don't pick Warren. I mean, I have my
it is sad. She would
with
be
Elizabeth Warren.
You got to be thinking in these circumstances, whoever it is that he picks has a real good chance of actually becoming president. I mean, we've all seen what's happening with Biden. His health does not look healthy. And I can't see him running for a second term. So whoever he chooses is either going to be the nominee 4 years from now, or is going to somewhere become president along the way. And so it's real important. And I do like Elizabeth Warren, and I think she would make an excellent VP and an excellent president. Right. But we'll see. Have you heard the people talk about? Well, the one that would be really interesting is if he chose. I'm sorry. Michelle Obama. For some reason I was blanking there. I haven't eaten lunch. If he chose Michelle Obama, it would just be like, she's so popular. The public loves her,
Oh God, that would be a disaster. Smart choice.
I don't know. They'd win easily. See, you got to remember that. You got to remember that you and I are talking about like issues and big trends and stuff like that. That's not how the politicians think. They think like, I got to win this election. They think in a tactical sense, not a strategic sense.
Well, I've been, and you can't trust the polls, but I've been looking at the polls, and Elizabeth Warren, as far as support among black women, is higher than Kamala Harris. Because,
really?
Yeah, and it was on Yahoo News. I looked at it, but my thing is, and you just kind of said the whole thing was what I was going to say is people that are progressives, people that are young people, and even older progressives want people that are going to help them. It's what have you done for me lately, and that's why I feel like people supported Trump. You brought it out. Yes, he had the dog whistles. Yes, there was a lot of racist sentiments throughout his rallies. But Trump talked the progressive line. There was a time in the primary
Yes.
he stuck up for Medicare for all.
I know. Isn't that funny? It's like I've been saying this for a very long time, and you probably know this. At some point, you know, the Democrats keep trying to move to the center, and the Republicans dragged them. Right? You remember back in the 90s, they would trick Bill Clinton into moving further and further to the right. And they've done that now, right?
With the welfare.
And it's just a matter of time until the Republicans also start attacking him from the left. And they did, you know, and it had to happen sooner or later. But it's just these guys are so hapless, and they don't have really anything to stand up for. And I mean, the Democrats, and
it's almost like the Democrats want to lose, Thomas. That's what I think.
The way I used to put it is they would rather lose than do the stuff that I suggest they do. They would rather lose. Now, look, there's people now are saying, trying to be hopeful about it, so that the Democrats are coming back, and they're going to, you know, they're going to sort of reevaluate, and we're going to get a progressive Democratic Party again. I have my doubts.
I agree with you.
Yeah. But I don't know where we're going in this country. But
well, Thomas,
I'm not optimistic about it. Let's just put it that way.
And this is Thomas Frank, Fire Breathing Ron. Thomas, my thing was if they wanted to reevaluate, the time was in 2016 when they had Hillary Clinton that was up by 15 points. She was looked at times to, and I didn't believe this, but she was looked at times to win Kansas, Nebraska,
Texas. Yep.
Texas.
So this is one of the. By the way, so remember, so one of the themes in my work is elite failure. Elite failure. And there's many examples of the financial crisis. Of course, all these guys get together and build a real estate bubble, and then they destroy the economy. And then the second elite failure, when our government, filled with the very same kind of elites, goes and bails them all out. Another elite failure, the Iraq War. On and on and on. But in some ways, the biggest and elite failure that we never talk about is the Clinton campaign of 2016. Right. She was advised by the best people in the business. The press of America was completely behind her. All the pollsters, do you remember this? Right. The New York Times was like, there's a 98.5% chance that she will win. All this crazy stuff. That's true. And then it all utterly collapsed. And instead of learning the sort of any kind of lesson from that, they have done this very peculiar thing, which is to start scolding everybody, to start scolding. So that's the last chapter of this new book of mine, is about what's happened since then. Instead of sort of embracing the lessons of historical populism, rebuilding their movement, looking inside and seeing what they did wrong, the Democrats and the sort of media elite have decided that, to scold the world. And that's very satisfying to them, but it's not a recipe for success. I mean, they're going to succeed anyway, because we're in such a shitty place right now, but they can't help but succeed. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. You remember that when Hillary was running, she was trying to do Republicans for Hillary. She was going out trying to get Republican votes.
Oh, she got them. The Lincoln Project, right?
Instead of getting the progressive voters and the Bernie Sanders voters, and she ridiculed them and her supporters. They ridiculed the Sanders supporters at the Democratic convention when they were doing the platform for the Democrats.
Oh, I remember. I was there. It
was a joke. It's a joke. Yeah. And then they wonder why they lose. And then she blames it on Bernie Sanders. And I have her book, What Happened. Yeah. She blames the Sanders supporters and Bernie Sanders himself. That's the reason why she lost. It wasn't Sanders supporters. It wasn't Bernie Sanders. It wasn't Russia. It was you didn't go to Michigan. You didn't go to these places. I know.
But there's that tendency to blame everybody but yourself. I forgive. Right. You have to forgive Hillary Clinton. That is a pretty rough thing to blow an election like that. I feel really, really, really sorry for her. And truth be told, she made this, incredible blunder, the deplorables remark, and she knew it was a blunder. She knew it was a blunder, and she apologized for it and tried to back out of it and all that sort of thing. And I mean, her husband knew what was going wrong. He could see it too. And the funny thing is, though, that the Democratic, I should say, the sort of liberal culture, since then, Hillary knew the deplorables to say that was a mistake, but it's as though the Democratic Party and the supporters of the party and liberals in general have doubled down on that idea, on scolding, sort of scolding people who are lower than them in the hierarchy. And so this is where my book comes in. There is a whole history of this, and I call this anti-populism. There's a long history of that kind of behavior in American politics, and I trace it back to the 1890s and to the sort of establishment's reaction to the original populist movement in the 1890s, the sort of left-wing movement of farmers that got its start right here in Kansas, by the way. And they crushed these guys with this kind of culture of scolding, calling them, they didn't use the word deplorables. They said much, much, much meaner things. I mean, cruel, evil things. But it's basically the idea of the social hierarchy. We, the elite, are up here because we are good. We are, this is a hierarchy is an order that is given to us by God. It is handed down by God. It's the great chain of being. And we're at the top because that's where we deserve to be. And the people at the bottom have no business trying to run the state, trying to run the economy, trying to run society. They need to stay in their place. And it's all, anti-populism is always this idea throughout history. And you see it, it's all around us now.
What you're talking about, well, first of all, the deplorables was the 47% comment by Mitt Romney, just and Hillary Clinton made
same thing, yes.
Yeah, same thing. Well, what you're saying is, and then I want to roll back into the questions. I know I detoured a bit, but to end on your comment, what you were talking about with the populism, and I feel like the issue now is, and you kind of explained it, you're talking about the people at the top and the people at the bottom. It almost brings us back to medieval times with the peasants and the serfs and stuff like. Do you agree with that? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So I use that phrase, "great chain of being." That's a medieval phrase, right. And because this whole idea of hierarchy. It's alien to us as Americans. It's reprehensible to us. Our culture, it's very democratic, and yet, all that said, it still comes through. And there's all sorts of different ways of defining it. And there's, for centuries, there's of course a racial hierarchy, and there's all sorts of other forms of really grotesque, ugly forms of hierarchy in this country. But the one that's invisible and that we don't like to talk about, and we have lots of trouble talking about, is social class and how we define social class in this country. And it used to be a very brutal thing, the robber barons and this sort of thing. And now it's much more subtle. Actually, it's not subtle to a lot of us. Our eyes are open. We see it. And a lot of it now is defined by education. This is a huge part of our class system now in this country. And people who went to these certain kinds of schools, they talk a certain way. They have a certain kind of accent. They all have a same way of looking at the world. And they are, by and large, the ruling class today. And so this new book of mine is about how the sort of brutal, ugly economic hierarchy of the 1890s, which is a lot of sort of this aristocratic hierarchy, people who are born to great wealth, robber barons, this kind of thing, transitions into this hierarchy, this meritocracy that we have today, but keeps a lot of the same attitudes and a lot of even the same language with which to beat down its opponents. And so I call this anti-populism, and this is my I shouldn't say this, my insight for the book. All my books have one insight. I come up with my insight, then I know my job is done, and then I write, 250 pages about it, But this is my insight for the book, is that this anti-populist idea is absolutely consistent from 1896 to 2016, and you can trace it and follow it. And so that's what I do in this book. I go into detail about 1896, this big election they had. And then in 1936, you see the exact same thing rolled out to try to defeat Roosevelt. That time they failed. And then you see it in the 1950s. It sort of changes. It begins to change sides, and it becomes a liberal idea rather than a conservative idea. And then I have a long section about the 60s and the civil rights movement, which are the good guys. And then now today, where it's like liberalism has embraced this culture of scolding. But if you go to my website, tcfrank.com, I've got a bunch of the illustrations from it. So this is my first book ever that has color illustrations, and a lot of them are really fun, and you'll get the message and the idea of the book right away when you look at these illustrations. That is that there's been this sort of reactionary movement that tries to suppress popular movements for economic democracy, and I call this anti-populism. And it's the same then as it is today. I mean, the words are only slightly different, but the images and ideas are the same. It's shocking once you understand this. It becomes instantly obvious. So check it out on my website, tcfrank.com, and buy the damn book.
I agree,
it's good.
100%.
It's good.
And not only this book, but the other books that you've put out with What's the Matter with Kansas, Listen Liberal, and there's a bunch of other ones I know you have.
Yeah. Yep.
I haven't read yet.
But those are the most popular ones that you just
right.
named.
But definitely check those out. Thomas Frank, thanks so much for your time. It really truly means a lot for you to come on here and talk